blacks figure out that they are no longer the preferred minority and that their special statuses that they've been given and granted are being removed and reallocated to Hispanic, we're going to have some unhappy blacks in this country. And so the blacks better wake up and figure out that they've got something to lose in this as well, and they'd better get on the right bandwagon and start doing the right thing and voting their own interest.
When the balloon finally does go up, a lot of the chaos and a lot of the violence and a large part of the coming civil war will be black on brown violence. And I think the blacks are finally starting to wake up. They're realizing that the pie is finite and there is not an endless supply of American goodies, and the more of those goodies that the Mexicans get, the less go to the blacks. So, yeah, that's another element in stirring the pot. I have to be honest, I'm not particularly concerned with what happens to either of those two races. I'm concerned about my own people, about white people, and this is why when the country breaks up, and that's what's going to happen, we're headed for a Soviet Union-style breakup of the United States when the central government simply collapses. I am concerned that the white man grab back as much of the pie as he can for himself, and so that our people will have some kind of future here, because right now this centralized tyranny from the United States government continues too much longer. We are headed for extinction, and I mean as in no more white people within a century.
Let me ask you a question. Who do you think is responsible for this? I know you've got the Bush crime family. They're up to their eyeballs in it. Who else is responsible for this? Where is this impetus coming from? We know in the Soviet Union, you had the Bolsheviks.
In a word, the Jews.
Okay.
You cannot understand what is happening in America or in the world today without an understanding of the Jewish question. To try and speak of the collapse of Western civilization or the problems that we're having right now or the financial collapse, anything like that, to try and speak of these things without speaking of Jews is like trying to discuss disease without discussing germs. True, it's not all their fault. We white people have allowed this to happen over the past 150 years or so. Basically, we've been stupid, we've been asleep, we've been naive, we have been entirely too easily deceived by these creatures. What it all boils down to, basically, is the Jewish question. The role that the Jews have played in European culture, in finance, in all throughout history, that is the Jewish question. The Jewish question is essentially, what is the world going to do with the Jews? They constitute a problem for everybody. In the long run, they are just as much a problem, say, for the blacks as for us, because the blacks don't benefit from the type of chaos that they've created. Those blacks like Louis Farrakhan, who have gone into their own history, understand that in many cases the people that brought them here as slaves were Jews. Mostly the financial type Jews who owned the slave ships. The white man may have sailed on the slave ships and taken all the risk, but it was the Jews who were financing and profiting from the slave trade. And just any aspect of civilization you look at, any aspect of the decay of civilization you look at, you will find always the Jew. Well, like right now, the whole world is facing possible collapse because of the impending Israeli attack on Iran. I don't know if that's going to happen. The general opinion seems to be that Benjamin Netanyahu has been talked down from the ledge, and that right now they're saying, nah, he won't attack, Iran, blah, blah, blah. We'll have to see. I still don't think the danger there has been alleviated yet, but this whole trouble with the fuel supply and the wars in the Middle East and the oil and all this sort of stuff, none of that would have happened if in 1948 we had not tried to impose this little gang of Jews on the eastern seaboard of the Mediterranean. Every problem that we have in the world can be traced back to the Jewish question in one form or another. Sometimes you have to look, but it's there.
So what do you propose going forward here? I mean, hypothetically, you're a novelist. I've not read Freedom's Sons yet. I look forward to it coming out. But where does this take us in the future? If we follow the template of the book, and one of the things I looked at in the book is how the tactics that you used, and I've quoted you many times on this because your comment that wars are won by accountants, not by generals.
Actually, wars are lost by accountants, not generals. It's never the generals who surrender, it's the accountants. Okay, well, in the last novel, Freedom's Sons, and by the way, I will send you volume 1, that is out from Lulu. Like I said, the last novel, Freedom's Sons, takes the first 50 years of the Northwest American Republic, and in this novel, In addition to writing I think a fairly good fictional story, I try to anticipate some of the problems that any independent white nation will face after independence from the United States. And I think I hear your music coming there.
Yep, our music is coming up right here, and we'll be right back here in just a few minutes, so stick with us. Good morning and welcome back. This is Mike Harris on Republic Broadcasting Network, Studio B. Today is Monday, October 8th, 2012, and we're on with a very special guest, Harold Covington, author of the Northwest novel series, which is going to be 5 novels here shortly, but I highly recommend that everyone out there listening buy these novels and really read them and really read the message that's there, because it is meaningful. And it does offer a possible scenario to preserve some of what America has been meant to be before it was hijacked, before we were subverted with this Zionist-occupied government here that we live under.
Okay. I was speaking before the break about the last novel, Freedom Sons, which takes us through the first 50 years of the history of the Northwest American Republic, this fictitious white homeland I've created. And I kind of give snapshots. The first section is the first year after the Revolution. The next section, which is the longest one, it takes place 12 years after independence, and this is when the United States forcibly attempts to reconquer the white homeland. This basically was put in to deal with all of these, nervous Nellies and naysayers who say, well, we can't have our own homeland, Harold, because the Americans will just nuke us. Then it goes on to 40 years, and the last section, which I haven't started on, will be either 48 or 50 years in the future. But the type of problems I deal with, other than reinvasion and attempted reconquest by the United States, are things like how to build a true white society that will survive and not be susceptible to the type of cultural poison that seeped into the United States. Things like building our own currency, building our own self-contained economy, and all the other things that we're going to have to do to create our own nation. In essence, what I'm advocating white people do, and maybe this is not the best example in the world, but we're going to have to do what the Jews did with Israel. We are going to have to choose part of this continent, and we are going to have to say, this land is ours. And by that, I mean all of ours. Once independence is established, there will be no non-whites, there will be no Jews, there will be no homosexuals, there will be none of this garbage that has invaded the rest of the continent, and this will be the land where we rest and restore our strength and raise our children in health and sanity. And once that land is chosen, we have to physically go there. This is the part of that we're in right now. I spend a large part of almost every podcast that I do every week on Radio Free Northwest pounding on the table and urging white people to pack the moving van, pack the U-Haul trailer, and get their asses up here where they're supposed to be. The Northwest migration has a lot of internet supporters, but they're not doing any good sitting in Texas or Cincinnati or Florida or Massachusetts or Wisconsin, wherever. They need to come here. That is the first step towards creating this new white nation, is to migrate. And so this basically, you might call it white Zionism. Again, that's probably a bad term, but we're trying to create our own nation here on the North American continent. And I believe that we're going to do so by hook or crook. If nothing else, when the balloon goes up, we'll grab it. And I hear the music again.
Here's our break music come up. We'll be right back at a short break. This is a short one here, so stick with us. Good morning and welcome back. This is Mike Harris on Republic Broadcasting Network, and we're on hour 2 of our show today. And it's Monday, October 8th, 2012. We're on with author Harold Covington, and I urge everyone to read his books and get some ideas as to what a possible future could be. Because, like I said, this is all fiction. It's all written as such, and just take it for what it's worth. But Harold, you kind of mentioned the U.S. breaking up, and this was first forecasted by Soviet